So before Avengers Endgame releases, I thought it best to do a little video about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and play a little devil's advocate about something that's been the talk since Infinity War dropped. The villain known as Thanos. Thanos' character is regarded as Marvel's most achieved villain this universe has ever seen, which begs the question, what the hell were these guys doing 22 movies ago? Think back when Iron Man 1, or as we like to call it, the debut of the MCU, was released. Obadiah Stane was considered to be a compelling enough villain that folks would remember, and we as fans took seriously enough to care about the overall conflict between him and Iron Man. The nemesis of Loki in Thor and the Avengers almost seemed hopeful, and ever since Iron Man 3 and so on, it at best concluded that Loki was the best that they can do. And 10 films later, Thanos makes an appearance and floors everyone. The writing, the motives, the performance, it's all there. And Marvel nerds have praised the studio for finally listening and giving fans what they've been asking for. Yeah, not so fast. As much as I want to give Marvel credit for finally giving the audience a quality villain, you mean to tell me that it took Marvel 10 plus movies to finally sit in the writer's room and go, I finally know what fans want? I highly doubt it. First of all, waiting that long to finally make a quality villain makes no sense. It doesn't seem to ring true that they just lack the ability to give us something that's important to any film. Many quality superhero movies understand that a good superhero movie is only as good as its well-written villain. However, what Marvel does best is always nail it when it comes to establishing their main superhero characters. And quite frankly, because of that, most of their films tend to be received quite positively overall. But as much as I love the MCU and its heroes, I can't seem to shake this idea that while these films are great, why can't Marvel share that same energy for every film? Why only a select few? Well, I think I know why. You see, ever since the first Avengers was released, I thoroughly enjoyed the solo films before it. That's not to say I haven't enjoyed the films after it either. It was just the thought of a phase or a universe or end credits never really crossed mine or anyone's minds for that matter. So while watching these movies, the merits alone made the film quite enjoyable. When Marvel eventually announced a slew of movies to be released in the near future, it became clear that the studio was onto something of a concept that would change cinema forever. Thus, the cinematic universe of Marvel was created. From then on, audiences have bought tickets to watch film after film, fully expecting to witness an Easter egg or an end credits scene. You could say that watching these movies was almost required viewing because they are all connected. I remember actually skipping one movie for a while and feeling like I've missed something or didn't understand the full intent of a reference that may have been shown or mentioned before in a past film, or maybe an Easter egg that I skipped out on because I just didn't care enough. And although Marvel's strategy to sustain its list of films has been quite successful, I can't help but realize that they've suffered from their own success. And it's only until we have something like Infinity War where I've come to the conclusion that Marvel has been tricking us this entire time. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. You see, when a film is released, there's a level of ignorance that's automatically applied until you view the film, especially if you're like me and you don't watch trailers 50 times. The experience becomes just that, an experience. And I know full well that if I critique it, it's solely on the quality of the film, the acting, the characters, the writing, etc. If a sequel were to ever happen, whatever criticisms I had for that first film could be corrected in the second to top it off. And it used to be like that for Marvel's films as well. But after the announcement that these current movies and the movies after would all be connected across the board, it immediately took the element of surprise out for me. I couldn't watch a Marvel movie the same way anymore because every time I did, it always felt like a sequel for the next film after it. Or worse yet, I'd always have that one guy behind me in the audience going, oh my God, just can't wait for the Avengers 3. Oh, did you hear about Captain Marvel? Oh, it's going to be so rad. And they're sharing the theories and rumors about what they may have heard about the MCU. And these are conversations that are happening right in the smack dab of a brand new Spider-Man movie. You see, what Marvel is doing is something that I appreciate fully. But this idea of making each movie connect to the one before it, somehow it almost feels like the film's existence is only here because of some contrived idea the studio has in mind, and to tell fans these plans to hype up the movies even more. Now, if you're an avid comic book fan, you're probably okay with this. And I love comic books as well. I mean, I grew up reading comics and still to this day would plan a trip to C2E2 or ASIN any day. But I love movies as well. Moreover, I love movies where I can feel the love and heart behind it. I love it when watching a movie, just the story alone and the characters, the script, it feels like these guys put their time and attention to make these films as great as they can be. The magic of film is usually felt because the quality alone sucks you in and keeps you in hypnosis for 2 hours or more and can transcend you out of your own reality and puts you somewhere that inspires, encourages, maybe even dream. It uplifts you. For some superhero movies, it was to motivate and find courage and tell me that guys with superhuman strength don't have to be the only ones that can do right things. We may be different externally, but we are all the same internally. It's one of the few things that made a superhero movie so very special. With the MCU's case, the films that come out 1 to 2 times a year all felt like a long teaser for the next Avengers. And though it seems fun, it makes the movie itself feel empty. Without mentioning a select few, Marvel movies have usually lacked the impact Iron Man once gave us, or a Black Panther, or a Thor, or even a Winter Soldier. Everything else in between and on weren't as compelling as they could be. The main characters themselves have worked legitimately, but of course, the overall challenges they faced were at best mediocre at times. Hence the critique that Marvel's villains suck. Now, why do they suck? Well, it's not quite that hard to figure out. And most of their villains exist only to be antagonists because movies need them. They don't have to be good antagonists, but in film, the hero needs to have conflict, and conflicts are generally stemmed from a character that tries to stop them from achieving it, the villain. But Marvel's villains exist only for the sake of existing. They have weak motivations, backstories are usually non-existent, the level of empathy that could be provoking for audiences is never there. And it's always a case of taking over the world or some kind of revenge scheme that they want to dish out. More or less, they feel cliche and hollow and not compelling enough to either be remembered or view again. Now, why do we still watch them? Well, because of the hero. Marvel's protagonists throughout each entry is typically written extremely well. There's enough flaws and motivations throughout the films that make us empathize and actually care for the leads. And so when they're faced with adversity, we really do want to see them push through it. However, where the writing behind them excels is where the writing behind the villain fails. And that's mostly due to making sure our heroes are established just enough to successfully release an ensemble film with 5 or more characters. But the thing is, because the villains are so weak, those solo films only work as essential throwaway movies to only feed the audience something in preparation for an event like the Avengers. Once Marvel announced these long lineups of what's to come, the pressure was on to make sure these films indeed happened, but with that came with a price. Where the focus was to make sure we knew well enough about these main characters, the writing department had to focus less on the villains because the goal now wasn't to make a great film. It was to get us familiar with the characters enough so that watching the Avengers didn't feel convoluted, awkward, or strange. You see what I did? Anyways, our nerd dreams of seeing all of our favorite superheroes on screen together was fulfilled. Yet the film lover inside of me has to admit that the only films I really enjoy are the Avenger films and a few others. But that's just 7 out of 22 movies. That's not really okay with me. Although I respect Marvel for what they've done for the film industry, I'd be lying if I said every film was great. Now with Thanos, we can all agree that he stole the show in every scene. Everything about him as far as an antagonist was on point. But with talks that Marvel has listened and fixed the villain problem is really quite a stretch for me. Keep in mind that Thanos was being built up since 2012. For me to really come to that conclusion, I would really have to wait and see after Endgame and after the MCU how Marvel really handles its villains. If you ask me, I don't quite foresee any improvement, but I digress. Marvel is fully capable of writing a compelling villain for all of its movies. But after its announcements, it's suffice to say they shot themselves in the foot to push out these solo films in record time, just to be on time with Avengers. Reasons why Thanos in Infinity War as a whole works as a fantastic film is because the work behind it is 10 years in the making. And so because of that, one could say the priority since day one has always been more about Infinity War and less about the solo films in general. Yet Thanos' character seems like Marvel has improved upon its writing skills, where I would say, for lack of a better phrase, it's always been about Thanos. I mean, who's to say the studio's love for his character was top priority all along? The issue, though, is that with these 22 films, everything else feels expendable. But because they have our favorite heroes interconnected with each other, it makes us want to come back. In fact, it almost requires us to. This idea that Marvel has listened to you or now gets what a good villain should be is not at all some epiphany someone just dreamt up one day. They've always had this ability in their pocket. But like I said earlier, announcing to the world which films were coming is what forced them to compromise this element and focus more on the main characters themselves. Saving that extra effort just for Thanos and ignoring the villains with the solo films and pray that Star-Lord keeps you laughing and you don't have to think about how awful Ronan the Accuser is as a bad guy. With DC now changing pace and focusing more on solo films and less about a connected universe, is where I think DC could actually give Marvel a run for its money after Endgame releases. With 3 films in a row being besieged with much-deserved praise, I have to admit DC is on its way to topping Marvel at some point. Focusing on just making good movies should be the end goal at the end of the day. Not that I'm hating on Marvel or anything like that, but I shouldn't feel like I have to watch a couple Iron Man movies just to understand why he's in Spider-Man. I want to be able to enjoy a Captain America movie without feeling obligated to watch the Avengers first. You might as well just call this list the 22 sequels. A villain like Thanos could have been possible all along with the other films if they had just maybe took a little bit more time and just focused more on the films themselves and less about a connected universe. But having deceived us with fun and quirky characters with humor and charm and charisma, we can't help but forgive them for giving us a second-class antagonist. But where they failed in that category, I believe DC could succeed. And please keep in mind, I'm not at all anti-Marvel. I just can see through the BS, and because I love movies, I care just as much as anyone about good movies being made with good villains. Thanks for watching this video, and if you agree with my points, please like this video and subscribe. I'm looking forward to continuing this debate, if you want to call it that, in the comment section or through my email, whichever you choose. But with all that being said, I'm totally excited for Avengers Endgame and just really eager to see what happens to everyone. By the way, I should be having more reviews up pretty soon. Just wanted to post this one before Endgame comes out, so stay tuned for that. Catch you guys in the next video, and remember, stay film conscious.